you know that at one time the price of butter for the whole country was set right here in Elgin? And it was done by a person whose company was here, but he never lived here. And you all know his name, Gail Gordon. Well, he had a son who did live here and chose to spend his time and build big businesses here, and then to share his wealth with the people of his town. Mr. Church?
It's hard after 150 years to come up the stairs. Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome. There was ever one piece of advice that I would convey to all of you here today, which I learned from my stepfather. It would be to never get complacent, to forge ahead, to follow your dreams, and never give up, ever. There will be times of trials and tribulations, struggles and difficulties, all of which can be overcome with hard work and perseverance. This challenge I lay upon all of you here today. Hello, my name is Alfred Church. My stepfather was Gail Gordon, the namesake of our library here in Elgin, Illinois, located along the banks of the beautiful Fox River. Some of you may have thought that Gail Gordon was a woman, but I can assure you all, he was a man among men, and it was from him that I developed my drive, my business spirit, my entrepreneurial spirit, and I accredit these to him and to him alone. I was born May 10th, 1844 in Vernon, Oneida County, New York. My father was Hiram Church. He was a fur trapper and trader. And it was his business which brought us here to the Fox River Valley. My mother, God rest her soul, was Emmeline Church. My father died unexpectedly in 1857, and my mother moved back to Kentucky with my brother Samuel and I, where mother eventually met Gail Gordon, inventor of the condensed milk process. Now, Gail Gordon, as aforementioned, he never gave up on his dreams. He never got complacent. Some of his dreams and ideas were winners, and some of his ideas were not so winnable. One of them that we still laugh about in circles after all these 100+ years or so, Gail Gordon thought that he would put a sail on a wagon, if you could imagine that. A sail on a wagon. He came up with this idea. He thought it could run on both land and water. It made him a virtual laughing stock. Another one of his ideas was the meat biscuit. Can you imagine? Honey, pass me a meat biscuit. The meat biscuit was dehydrated beef, surrounded by flour, and then baked, and it was labeled unpalatable. But after the year 1857, after several attempts, he did receive a patent for condensed milk, the process of boiling water out of milk, adding sugar, and putting it in a can. Now, the benefit of this was that it wouldn't spoil and it could be shipped over long distances. Hence, during the Civil War, he sold large quantities of Gordon's condensed milk, and it made him a very rich man. Now, my mother convinced my stepfather, Gail Gordon, to open up a condensing plant here in Elgin, Illinois. In the year 1865, we opened up a condensing plant at the corner of North and Brook Streets. I became the superintendent. It was during this time there was a large roof we placed over the springs at North and Brook Streets, and we built a small barrier a small dam or dike, if you will, around the springs at North and Brook Street, which contained the water for the needs of our condensing plant. It was the year 1873. We ran a long pipe down a 10.5-foot grade slate, 10.5-foot grade, all the way down to Market Square, downtown Elgin, Illinois. To this, we put in water to a watering trough for the horses and a fountain. And thus became Fountain Square. Yes. Fountain Square. Fountain Square. Now, Gail Borden, he never did live in Elgin, Illinois, though he did buy a house in 1873 at 378 Division Street in Elgin. The house still stands. He became sick and moved to Texas, where he passed away a very, very rich man. Now, it was the year 1892, jumping ahead a little bit. Elgin was in desperate need for a library. My brother Samuel and I purchased the Schofield Mansion at 50 North Spring Street. When we purchased the building, at the time, there was only the center structure, which was the whole mansion. We added the 2 wings onto the building. We donated this building after extensive repairs and investment to the city of Elgin, to be used as the public library in Elgin, Illinois, with the one condition that it always and be forever called the Gail Borden Public Library. How many of you have ever said, honey, I'm taking the kids to Gail Borden today? That's right. Now, it was in about the year 1877. I left the condensatory plant. I went into business with a friend of mine named William Grote. I always loved that name, William Grote. It just had a ring to it. I don't think I ever told him in hindsight. I wish I would have. But he was a very smart, intelligent man, a businessman. William Grote and I, we purchased land all around Elgin, large tracts. We subdivided it. We sold it for business. We sold it for industry, and we sold it for residential tracts and housing. And it was a very lucrative business. At one time, I was deemed the richest man in Elgin, Illinois. I was the wealthiest man in Elgin, Illinois. In the year 1886, my wife and I married. We purchased a house. It's a 15-room mansion. Some of you may know it today by the Leeds Funeral Home on Division Street. The times we had there, it had a porte cochere out front so that my friends could come in on their wagon unencumbered by rain or wind or weather or snow. It was brick and brownstone trim. It had 15 rooms. It cost us $25,000 at the time. That was more than 20 times the cost of an average house in Elgin. The best part about it, in my opinion, was the third floor had a ballroom. The whole third floor was a ballroom. It was only the third house in Elgin that had a room specifically designed as a ballroom. And the parties we had there, we danced till the morning, many a night. But I was, at this time too, when I was involved with the real estate business, I was quite busy. No moss grew underneath my feet. As you can see, there is still no moss underneath my feet after all these years. I was quite busy man. I was the board of directors for the subway or the train system here in Elgin, Illinois. I was working on the Elgin Lumber and Supply Company, the Fox River Stone Company. I was built many buildings. I was the board of directors of 2 banks. I was also on the board for the city library, the city school system, and the Elgin Academy, and I was also in charge of the old people's home here in town in Elgin. Now, I'm going to dispel some rumors. I'm sure you've all heard them. It was in the year 1903, the rumor came about that Alfred Church left Illinois and Elgin to escape paying high taxes. It's all true. It is. I left Elgin, Illinois to escape paying the high taxes. It was an exorbitant assessment on my personal property holdings in the Borden's factory, which made me leave Elgin, Illinois. I moved back to New York City. And I'm certain now that after all these years, I can only guess that Illinois has its tax problems perfectly in order by now, when you are all living in tax utopia. And I missed out on that, so after all these years, I'm still a little bit disgruntled. Nobody knew in Elgin, too. I was at one time deemed the greatest philanthropist in Elgin, Illinois. I gave to many charitable organizations. I gave to startup businesses in Elgin that would benefit Elgin, Illinois. I gave extensively to the YMCA, YWCA. I also gave to further the education of 25 young students who furthered their career, many of who went on to become lawyers. And none of this was revealed until my death in 1911. I died from chronic indigestion and what the papers called other diseases. I am still waiting to hear from my doctor what the other diseases were. Sometimes these reports, as you all know, they take time to come in, and I'm hoping I would get them soon, at least before I'm reincarnated. Maybe. So I know what to watch out for. But my wife, Mary, also too, she gave a piece of land and a house in 1901, which was the start of the YWCA here in town. And it's been a treasure living here. Everything in Elgin, everything that Elgin has to offer, the people, the city, the town, it has fulfilled my cultural life, my business life, my spiritual life, my love life, everything. Elgin, and it gave me everything I can possibly imagine. My meat bill too, by the way, at Keever's Meat Market in Elgin here was always high. I gave meat to many families that were hungry and poor. We would routinely hand out steaks, burgers, chops. Does anyone like steaks, burgers, chops? I love them. But my meat bill was always very high, and we just tried to be involved with the community here. But other than that, in closing, I'd like to offer you all this. Again, it was my stepfather, Gail Horton, motivated me. He was the man, basically, that told me it's not so many words not to give up on your dreams. So I challenge you all here today. Go out and find your own meat biscuit. Huh? Go out and find your own wagon with a sail. That one still gets me after all these years. But I challenge you to do that. Go out and forge ahead and follow your own dreams. Never get complacent. And do the best we all can. And with that, I bid you farewell. Thank you.
There Bluff City Cemetery. But I never knew the significance behind the carvings or the meaning behind the symbols until I was lucky enough to take a walk through the cemetery with you.
Thank you. I'm glad Mr. Church warmed you up for me. Now you're ready for a challenge that I have for you. How many of you have attended the cemetery walk at the cemetery in the past? Would you raise your hand? Oh my goodness. Well, then you know the meaning of many of the monuments already. And I'll need your knowledge to help us today. Are you ready? We have a very short time to identify the symbols of 11 monuments. If you know the meaning, please call out. Don't be shy. There are no wrong answers. Are you ready? Here's the first one. This is the Raymond Monument, and these are all monuments that were on the walk that you would have seen if you were at the cemetery. You see the stump of the tree. What does the stump designate? Life cut short. Excellent. Death, life cut short. That's right. And the ivy on the tree is a sign of close, faithfulness, and immortality. Think death when you think of something. The peeling bark, now think about a tree with bark peeling, that does symbolize death. And the smaller stumps, you can see on the other, there we go. Just on the edge, you can see a small stump there. That often represents children who have died young. All right, the Ron Monument. Next one. Your eyes are drawn first to the lilies at the bottom of the monument, and those are a sign of what? I think I heard it. Purity or innocence. There are several meanings for lilies. Majesty or the resurrection. Now look at the top of the stone, and you'll see, you probably can't see the letters, but they're links of a chain with an F, an L, and a T. And those stand for friendship, love, and truth. And there's an I right below it, the seeing eye of God. Now you also might, on such a monument, see the initials I-I-O-F under the chain link. And those are the initials for what fraternal organization? Excellent, yes. The Independent Order of Odd Fellows. Now here's another stone that designates a fraternal order. This one is for, can you see? This is for the, they like to ride in little cars. The Shriners, yes, somebody said that, the Shriners. Excellent. The next one, we have the Mackey Monument, and at the top you see the palm. And what does a palm represent? That's a tough one. You see the palm quite a bit. It stands for eternal peace or spiritual victory. And the next one, the fence. These are hard to see on this one, but there are the grapes and a grapevine, and this is a symbol of the Christian faith. And you think about, I think in the Bible, I am the vine and you are the branches, so it's a symbol of Christian faith. All right. In the Carr Monument, we have the ivy, which we already saw on the Raymond tree stump, and that we know stands for faithfulness and immortality. But then on the other side are the oak leaves. Now think about an oak tree. What would that represent? Power, authority, victory. Right. Good. You're doing very well. The next one. You don't see these too often, but we have tulips on this one. And the tulips represent, now some have said they represent, well they do represent love or charity, but some women have said they represent my husband's too cheap to buy roses. But I'm hoping you see tulips in a better light when you see them. one, you see the roses. This is a beautiful monument. There are roses that are carved on the monument with a Bible passage, and roses also represent love, unfailing love and hope also. There's a scroll on the back behind the roses, and it represents one's life unfolding. And the scroll may be scrolled farther down depending on the age of the person who died. At the bottom, I don't think you can see here, but there are two shells, and they represent the resurrection. Excellent. Okay. On this monument, you notice the drape that's carved over the top. This one, the drape represents mourning, sorrow. Excellent. Okay. You're doing very well. And the Leith Monument, you can't miss this one when you see it. The bench is called an exedra, and it symbolizes rest, right, rest and repose, which is quite fitting, exactly, for the owner of a furniture store. But it wasn't just Mr. Leith who used this symbol. On either side are urns, and the urns, which is an old symbol, represent your body as a vessel of your soul. Now, there are some monuments in the cemetery also that are more modern and that are using a laser technique for adding symbols. And these aren't traditional symbols, so we'll have to guess their meaning, but you're such a smart group. I know you'll figure these out. Mr. Swain Kenneth has a parachute and the word Korea by his name. What do you think? Very good. Yeah. Now, Carlene has a piece of pie, sliced pie, by her name. Very good. I wish I had known Carlene. Yeah. I must have been a good listener. You did an excellent job on identifying the symbols. I'm very, very happy that you came today. The smart group came today. We can learn much about people's lives from their headstones. There are many more symbols on monuments in cemeteries, but there are too many for me to mention for us to talk about today. But before I leave you, I have a few epitaphs you might want to consider in terms of putting on your monument. An epitaph is a commemorative inscription. It's on a monument, and not all monuments have them, but it gives us insight into a person's personality. Many of them are religious, many have Bible verses, and many of them are reflective of family and friends. But then there are the humorous ones. So think about some of these. On the 22nd of June, Jonathan Fiddle went out of tune. It's a good thing his name is Fiddle. Or, here lies Ezekiel April, age 102. The good die young. Or, I think probably one of my very favorites, I told you I was sick. What will your epitaph tell others about you? Thank you.
Sometimes I think Elgin could be called the second city due to our more famous and bigger neighbor to the east. But sure, they have the Art Institute and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. But we have our own Elgin Symphony Orchestra, 4 years old this year. And we have world-renowned artists also. You heard from Laura Bray, and there's another artist who worked in different media and whose work is displayed worldwide. Oh, and happy belated birthday, Trudy.
Thank you
so much. Thank you. Yes, welcome, welcome. I am Trygve Rolstead, and I was born on September the 27th of 1903. So yes, indeed, you may wish me a happy birthday. Over the years, I recorded much of my life on dictabel tapes and in journals, and I'd like to read you some of those outtakes of some of the more significant things in my life right now. My parents were Norwegian immigrants. My father was a watchmaker, and my mother busied her leisure hours with charcoal drawing and painting, so I came to art early and honestly. I attended Lowry Grade School over here on the west side of Elgin, and Elgin High School just over here, and I managed very well in all of my art classes, achieving the highest grades in every one of them. Now, shortly after graduating, I heard of a sculptor's studio in Geneva, Illinois, just south of here, at the estate of Colonel George Fabian. Now, Colonel Fabian's wife, Nellie, had attended the Art Institute, and she retained several artists who embellished their extensive grounds along both sides of the river in Geneva with sculptures and with carvings and all manner of artwork. I took a miniature statue that I had done, got on my bicycle and rode from Elgin down to Geneva to meet with Mrs. Fabian. She was so taken with that sculpture that she called my mother and asked if she could retain my services immediately. And so I came into the realm of the Fabian estate in their artist's studio down there. And rather than ride my bicycle back and forth between Elgin and Geneva every day, they offered me space in one of their extensive gardens to set up a tent and to stay there. And I did that, and I took my meals in a mess hall that was specifically designed for the Fabian staff. Then my mother came across an article in the American Magazine in April of 1922, and the article was entitled, "A Wonderful Thing Happened to This Boy." This was the story of renowned Midwest sculptor, lecturer, and writer Lorado Taft, who had his Midwest studios just here in Chicago, and my mother strongly suggested that I go and speak with him. I did exactly that, and I became his stage and studio assistant, building up for him in clay heroic statues and portrait statues. One afternoon, on a Sunday if I recall correctly, I was listening to one of his lectures in the auditorium at the Chicago Art Institute, and I looked up at the slide that was projected on the screen, and I heard Lorado describing it. This was the famous Niche of St. Louis, which I had modeled for him. And I heard him remark, "It is made by," and he paused, and he said, "Well, I can't remember his name, but they call him Trig." From that moment on, I made absolutely certain that he would never forget my name again. And when I wanted to become an instructor in sculpture class, Taft sent me this letter of recommend dated October the 29th of 1926. To whom it may concern, I take pleasure in testifying to the character, intelligence, and skill of my former pupil, Trygve Rolstead. I have had many pupils, and he was among the best. Need I say more? Signed, Lorado Taft. I eventually entered the University of Washington in Seattle in 1927, and I earned 4 years of sculpture credit in just a year and a half of attendance. A note in the margin. Truthfully, I learned all the mysteries of the sculptor's profession thanks to the influences of Donatello and Lorado, and developed my own broad style of portrayal. For me, bronze is the medium of the modeler. I like it best. My notes from the 1940s. I served the United States government in World War II as the very first metal sculptor of the War Department. In fact, some of you have seen, I am certain, and some of you may even be entitled to wear several of the medals I designed. the Women's Army Corps Service, or the WACS, United States Legion of Merit, the Screaming Eagle Medal for the 101st Airborne, the Bronze Star, and many more, including the Combat Infantry Badge. In 1946, at the end of the Second World War, I was asked to edit and design the American Roll of Honor for London, England's St. Paul's Cathedral. This great 500-page volume contains the names of over 28,000 Americans stationed in Great Britain who gave their lives throughout the war. And it was presented to St. Paul's Cathedral on July the 4th of 1951 by General Dwight David Eisenhower. Its red leather cover depicts Winged Victory holding a two-handed sword, all done in gold leaf. That Palladian-style piece of artwork, which you can see on the cover over here, graces my wife's and my monument at Bluff City Cemetery. I remember writing this. Monuments are not erected every day, but when they are, they should be the best. And you no doubt have seen my work, many of you. I'm certain my Pioneer Family Memorial statue stands just south of the Kimball Street Bridge across from the new library in downtown Elgin. That statue actually got its beginnings when I received a commission from the city of Elgin in 1930 to produce a bust of the city's founder, Gifford, for the centennial celebration of the founding of this town. Eventually, it developed into the statue which you now see along the river here. It depicts 4 pioneers and an infant. One of those pioneers is modeled on James T. Gifford, the founder of Elgin. The other younger pioneer is modeled on me. Those 12-foot tall statues stood in my studios on Ryerson Avenue for a very, very long time. And in those 70 years that it took to finally have that cast in bronze, I did everything I could to move that project forward. I even designed a commemorative coin, which I sold to raise funds for that. I tried, and other people eventually joined me in that cause. And thanks to their efforts, that statue was finally erected. It was cast and put up along the riverfront, and it was dedicated on November the 11th, 2001. That statue will eventually grow up. I said it's like an oak tree. Its growth is slow, but it's a mighty great thing when it matures. So it did mature. It was dedicated on November the 11th of 2001, and many of you have seen that. Many of you have seen that, but it was too late. Too late for me, for I died on June the 8th, 1990, at the age of 86, here in Elgin. But you know, I conceived of an even more ambitious piece. It was to be called I Will. It would have towered 500 feet over the harbor of Chicago and changed forever the skyline of that city. It would have dwarfed the Statue of Liberty, and here is a proposal drawing for that. It would have been a magnificent piece that would have taken 3 years and 200 people working day and night to achieve this piece. It would have been, yes, monuments are not erected every day. Thank you for stopping by.
We've all heard the saying, hard as a rock. Well, Cindy knows that sometimes that's true, but it isn't always.
The Carver's Medium. Most of the delicate sculptures that grace monuments in Bluff City Cemetery are fashioned of marble, a soft stone and a carver's delight. Limestone, first cousin to marble, is a stone even softer and easier to work with. While the best limestone is still harvested in Indiana, and marble continues to be mined in Vermont, Georgia, and the Dakotas, neither is in great demand. Unfortunately, both marble and limestone have a high silica content, which simply cannot withstand the acids in today's atmosphere. Our air pollution erodes these stones at an alarming rate. The vast majority of memorials in Bluff City Cemetery are made of granite. With no appreciable silicone content, granite is the material best suited for our environment. It endures. The evolution of the pneumatic drill finally allows the memorialist to carve delicate details into the granite's hard surface. Available in shades of red, pink, gray, blue, black, as well as a rainbow combinations, granite is the medium of choice. Several areas in the country have produced quality granite on such a continuous basis as to have become legendary supplier of the stone. Alberton, Georgia, and the Bar, Vermont, areas of two such sites known for their red and gray granite. St. Cloud, Minnesota produces quality red and gray and is famous for the rainbow granite as well. The quarry in Millbank, South Dakota is incredibly immense, measuring 1,500 feet thick, 30 miles across, and 1,200 miles long. Early carvers used tools such as chisels. Chisels have been used for years, but today, as granite is the medium of choice, carrying stone is now done with lasers, diamond cutters, and water jet tool technology. And what about memorials in the future? Prototypes made entirely of lucite exist. In California and Ontario, Canada, solar-powered tape recorders that are built into the monuments are available for purchase. Perhaps the children of tomorrow will think it common to visit a grandparent's grave and listen to the voices of the past.
By the shores of Gitche Gumee, by the shining Big Sea waters, everybody knows Beginning Lands, the song Hiawatha. And thousands of people have seen the reenactment of it, which is held every year here in Elgin. Carl and Maud Paleska are the moving forces behind this beautiful pageant. But they have contributed so much more to the city of Elgin. Carl and Maud, let's dance.
Okay. Should you ask me Wednesday traditions? And I should tell you that maybe.
Carl, remember, the phrases must be slow and deliberate.
Yes.
Try
Okay.
to take a breath in between each line. Oh, and don't forget, emphasize the words we have marked up here.
Okay. Should you ask me whence these stories, whence these legends and traditions, with the odors of the forest, with the curling smoke of wigwams, with the damp-bedewed meadows, with the rushing of great rivers, with their frequent repetitions and the wild reverberations as of thunder in the mountains, I should answer. I should tell you from the forests and the prairies, from the Great Lakes, the Northland, and from the land of the Ojibwe, and from the land of the Dakota.
Yes, much better. Now, we should rehearse a little of our dances. We have to keep up our skills. Let's see, how about the Chickasaw stomp dance?
That is a good one.
Okay.
Hoo. Hey, hey. Hoo. Hey. Oh! What? You stepped on my foot again.
We have to do that. Welcome. We're so happy to see you here today and to have the opportunity to tell you about a pageant that we produce at Boy Scout Camp Big Timber in Elgin. This is my husband, Carl Karlaska, and I'm Maud. Carl's better known as Injun Par. That's because, well, why don't you go ahead and tell him, Carl?
Well, I don't mind that they call me Injun Par. Even though my father was a German immigrant, I have always loved the West. In fact, I was actually born in Wyoming on one of my parents' frequent hunting trips. That's right, I was born on a hunting trip. So does that help you to understand why traveling to the West, by then the home of most American Indians, was a Karlaska family tradition? I love the things I saw as a little boy. I loved Indian life. I loved the Indian villages, the people, but mostly I loved their traditions.
And of all the Indian traditions, Carl's favorite was the dances. He first noticed the authentic costumes, the colorful feathers, the beaded leather, the moccasins, and how they were all handmade on the Indian grounds.
My first introduction to Indian dancing was actually when I went to see the Buffalo Bill Wild West Exposition in 1896. When I saw those Indian dances, I was hooked like a fish. I had to learn to do those dances myself.
Carl met Eddie Littlechief. He was a Rosebud Sioux, and they became friends. Eddie taught Carl all the Indian dances, and it was very rare at that time for a white man to learn the Indian dances, but they became very close and almost like brothers. I was happy to help Carl as I was a Girl Scout leader, and before long we were traveling out west to visit our Indian friends and to learn more about their traditions, and over time I believe we began to feel like family. Now, my husband was adopted as a brother by the Sioux, the Blackfoot, and the Ojibwe Indians. That was a very rare and memorable honor for my husband and a tribute to how the Indians felt about the way my husband honored their traditions.
I was involved in Boy Scouting, and in 1927, I taught some of the scouts out at Camp Big Timber, west of Elgin, some of the dances that Eddie had taught me. They would dance around the campfire. Well, the boys asked if they could invite their parents to come and see what they had learned. So we put seats around the campfire, and then more and more visitors came each year. then we introduce the narration of the beautiful Song of Hiawatha, a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. At first it was all boys.
Carl. I was a home economics teacher at Elgin High School. And as our program grew and progressed, we needed a woman to play the role of Old Nokomis. That became me. And for years, I was the only woman in the show until, let's see, that was in 1948. We had the Felicia dancers, the little dragonfly girl dancers.
I'm sorry that we don't have time to tell you all about the pageant today. What a beautiful pageant it is, and all the details about it. But it is well documented, and you can look it up in the newspaper if you wish. Now, previously, I was an accountant, and now I'm known to be the producer, the director, and the choreographer of the Hiawatha pageant. You might think that's quite different being an accountant than what I do now, but not so. You see, when I was an accountant, I organized numbers. Now, as the producer and director, I organize the young people of Elgin, and I give them an opportunity to participate in this pageant and to learn all about those wonderful Indian traditions. But at the same time, they're establishing their own traditions. And so, should you ask me now, whence these stories? Whence these legends and traditions? I should answer, I should tell you, from the grounds of Camp Big Timber in Elgin, Illinois.
Back to our dancing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you have it, our first production of Silent City Speaks, which is an adjunct to the Elgin Historic Museum's annual cemetery walk. We hope you enjoy the journey, and then next year you'll come back and meet a whole new group of fascinating Elginites. Thank you.